Welcome back into the GSMC Sports Podcast, as we're now going to look back at the 2023 NBA offseason, sort of review it 1 year removed, and talk about how teams did in some of the big moves that were made. And of course, the blockbuster deal of the summer was the Milwaukee Bucks acquiring Damian Lillard. So, details of this trade: it was a three-teamer. It was the Bucks getting Damian Lillard, the Trailblazers getting Jrue Holiday, DeAndre Ayton, Tumani Camara, a 2029 unprotected first-round pick, swaps in 2028 and 2030, and the Suns getting Yusuf Nurkic, Grayson Allen, Nasir Little, and Keon Johnson. So, obviously, the Bucks make this move because they, at this point too, and something that I think goes pretty under the radar in terms of what people talk about surrounding this deal, is the fact that last summer was kind of the first time that Giannis had put out at least ideas about him potentially leaving Milwaukee, that he leaves it all out on the court every single night, and he wants to know that his investment into the team is mirrored by the investment of the front office into what is surrounding Giannis. And that's what this move was really about, was going and getting him, in theory, the best teammate that he has ever had in Damian Lillard, going to be a Hall of Famer, probably, I think he was selected to the top 75 players of all time when they did that ceremony last All-Star break or whatnot. But I think that, again, there was a little bit more politics involved in the deal than people really realized, I think, now a year removed. But that is an important perspective to take into consideration with this deal. But I want to touch on the Blazers and the Suns real quick here. So for the Trailblazers, I really like this deal, and I know it doesn't sound like a ton of return in the moment, but they were able to then flip Jrue Holiday into a trade with the Celtics that we'll be getting into briefly, and then that deal additionally brought in some other futures. So I think by the end of flipping Jrue in this situation, they ended up with 3 first-round picks and 2 swaps ultimately for Lillard. And then add to that DeAndre Ayton, Robert Williams, Tumani Camara, who are at least younger players. Now, the Ayton fit, I have to imagine, I mean, we'll see what happens. The Trailblazers just drafted Donovan Clingan, so I do have some concerns about what the future of those big men are going to do because, not sure how you balance Ayton, Williams, and Clingan, but we'll see about that. But they also got Brogdon, who they also just flipped for Denny Avdia, who is a young piece at 23 years old that I still really like. And overall, I'd give the Trailblazers a B+ on this deal. Again, that is also taking into consideration the moves that followed afterwards. But I like how the Trailblazers at this point, you see all of these deals with, 5 first-round picks and a bunch of swaps and such. They got their share of, draft capital, maybe not quite as extreme as some of these other deals, but I think that just important of that is getting some actual tangible pieces. And I would even include, to at least some degree, Donovan Clingan, in terms of it helped the Trailblazers just bottom out last year, and it opens up room for some of their young guards, Anthony Simons, Scoot Henderson, and Shaedon Sharpe, to get a little bit more playing time. I think that clearing out Dame was the right decision. You could probably even give the Trailblazers an A- on this deal as well. I have a B+, but, I think that we're still going to have to see, specifically with that front court of the 3 big men that they have, what are they going to do there? But I like what the Trailblazers got here. I also like what the Suns got here. I give them a B+. They got 2 legitimate rotational players in exchange for really just DeAndre Ayton. And I believe there were some picks involved there with Phoenix, and they already seem to be just about all the way in on the current situation with their current big 3. But Ayton was not a fit on Phoenix anymore. It was clear there was some bad blood there, and it needed to be addressed. So they end up getting Grayson Allen and Yusuf Nurkic, who were full-time starters for them just about the entire season. Obviously, Allen goes down with the injury in Game 2 of the playoffs in the West, something that I also feel like gets overlooked a little bit, because for such a top-heavy team to lose one of your top 5 guys, that's a big deal. I'd argue probably that Allen at times was even the third best player on the Suns over Brad Beal at times. Now, I know that's a little bit of a hot take, and again, playing semantics here, but third, fourth, fifth best player on the team on a team that didn't have very much depth. And Allen was the leader in three-point percentage through the regular season, somebody that they just last year also extended to a new contract, should be in Phoenix for years to come. So, if it weren't for the panic trade of Bradley Beal, I would probably like the situation of the Suns a little bit more. But as for this trade alone, I'll give them B+. And for the Bucks, ultimately, I land on a B- for them. Like I mentioned, there were the sort of outside politics in terms of needing to prove to Giannis that they were all in. There was probably a better way to go about this than to end up trading the key piece to their rival in the Boston Celtics, who Jrue ends up helping lead them to a championship. So that doesn't feel great. But the reason why I don't have this grade lower is because I'm not ready to write out Giannis and Dame because of one season. That I do think that this can legitimately be, and I still feel this way, the best 1-2 duo in the NBA. And that was clearly not the case last year, but I'm not selling all my stock on it. So that's kind of where we stand there. I give them a B-, but the reason why it hurts so much is because this directly opened up the doors for the Celtics to acquire Jrue Holiday, where in exchange they gave up. I kept mentioning Robert Williams before. That was obviously a part of this trade, so excuse me if we've gotten a little bit messy here. But the Jrue Holiday deal was Robert Williams, Malcolm Brogdon, a 2024 first-round pick via Golden State, and a 2029 unprotected first-round pick from Boston. I give the Trailblazers an A- on this. If injuries weren't a thing, I'd feel very good about the long-term upside of Robert Williams. He was, in my opinion, going to win Defensive Player of the Year in 2022, the year that Marcus Smart won it, but he ended up going down with that meniscus injury towards the end of the season that opened it up for Marcus Smart. That Celtics team was just so dominant defensively, and they were going to reward someone. I thought Rob Williams was the most impactful defensive player on that Celtics team that year. But again, injuries are a thing. Rob missed just about all of last season, so there is definitely concern there. But the Blazers flipped Jrue Holiday, who they had no use for, into a number of future assets and a trade chip in Malcolm Brogdon, like I mentioned, which they ended up using to go get a young forward in Denny Avdia. So I think that they made out pretty well from this combination of moves. And for the Celtics, I give this Jrue Holiday deal an A+. Now, it was really a no-brainer for me. Giving up, Rob, who was very beloved in Boston, Malcolm Brogdon, who has injury history, and I still do think can be a productive player, but there is something to be said for going back to college. He's been struggling with injuries. And, one of the first round picks that they traded was actually a part of them acquiring Kristaps Porzingis. So it's an A+ for the Celtics on the Jrue Holiday front. But like I just alluded to, they also traded for Kristaps Porzingis, giving up Marcus Smart, Danilo Gallinari, and Mike Muscala. And in return, they get Kristaps Porzingis and 2 first-round picks. The Golden State one that they used to be a part of the Jrue Holiday trade, and then the number 25 pick, which they traded down, acquired a bunch of future second-round picks as well. But the fact that they got first-round picks out of this Porzingis deal speaks to Brad Stevens and the job that he has done since taking over the front office as the general manager, president of basketball operations, whatever his official title is. But since taking over that in Boston, he has been tremendous. I give the Celtics an A for this one. The reason why I don't, you could even make an argument for A-, because the difference is this particular move did also include them having to re-sign Porzingis long-term, which I'm not totally opposed to, but there is the injury concern. He missed the majority of this year's playoffs, so, when you win a championship, hard to criticize anything, and Porzingis is an excellent player, but that is probably the concern with it, is the health and whether or not he's going to hold up long-term on the deal that they eventually had to sign him to in order to talk him into this deal. So I have an A for him there. And the last move I want to dive into is the Wizards trading Bradley Beal to the Phoenix Suns. Ultimately, the Wizards don't get all that much in return. They get a bunch of second-round picks from Phoenix. They get some pick swaps in there as well. Landry Shamet and Chris Paul. And then they immediately traded Chris Paul to the Warriors to get Jordan Poole and a top 20 protected first-round pick from the Warriors in 2030, I think it is, which probably leaning that that's not going to pan out anyways. So it was pretty much just Jordan Poole, and it was getting Chris Paul off of the contract. Now, or off of the books there. The important thing I would say is getting rid of Bradley Beal's contract, which I believe is up there with the worst in the NBA currently. I thought it was crazy of them to sign him to that in the first place, especially considering the fact that they did so the offseason headed into the 2022-23 season, where for a year at that point all we were hearing about was the sweepstakes for Victor Wembanyama and how great he was going to be. Now sure, a year ahead we weren't exactly sure how definitive it was going to be, but it's pretty clear that that was, worth trying to get in on, and the Wizards waited until this year where there was pretty much no superstar potential in the draft for tanking. But you know what, they pick up Jordan Poole on his expensive contract. They're probably just going to play it out there. He'll probably, no offense, but he will probably help them tank a little bit these upcoming years. But we'll see. The Wizards at least picked a direction. Ultimately, I feel like for them, I give them a B+. It was not I know other people were actually higher on the return than I currently am. Again, it's just about correcting the mistake that they had already made of giving Beal that type of a contract, especially with a no trade clause that if it wasn't for this deal, I don't know what else would have been out there for them. And for the Suns, I give this a C, because this was, investing into probably worse than that, truthfully, probably closer to a C-, D+, because they invested into one of these terrible contracts. It was the new owner syndrome of trying to make all these splashy moves and getting excited, but ultimately it fell short. So let me know if you think I'm being too harsh there. Maybe we see some sort of resurgence with the Suns this year, but definitely don't feel great about it. But that is it for my grades here from the biggest moves of the 2023 offseason. Let us know in the comment section if you have any other thoughts on some other deals that went down, and I can maybe throw some grades out there. But we are going to be taking our final break here, and when we come back on the other side, yesterday we had the announcement of the MLB All-Star starters, so we're going to look through both rosters and point out what stands out the most. So we're going to be diving into that, but stick with us. We're going to be taking one last break. Don't go anywhere.